The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. His praise endureth forever. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio, and it's a great honor and pleasure to be with all of you and to have my good friend and co-host Rob Skiba joining us this evening. How are you doing, Rob?
I'm doing good, Zen. How are you doing?
Doing well, man. Just just reading and studying and listening to some craziness. I had heard a story about all these farmers that are coming out and speaking about how they are being paid by the government to pretty much decimate their crops and to get rid of, all that they're growing for this upcoming harvest, which is, absolutely bizarre. But a lot of them are confirming witness for one another, and they're warning against this because they are seeing it as, a lot of people are going to be starving and not have enough to eat and not have enough available just because of the craziness of this particular policy. I didn't know if you had heard about all that
No, I haven't heard about anything like that recently, but I was aware of things like that happening before. You might remember like dumping huge loads of milk, and all this food was just being thrown out. And I'm like, I want to smack the farmers that are doing that, first of all.
Yeah, right.
Because like I don't care who told you to do. Like go to open up a local farmers market somewhere, because people will buy it. This just shows you that everything that's been going on in the last 2 years is 100% engineered. And when you figure out who's engineering it, sooner or later people got to wake up, because there is no reason for there to be any food shortages. There's no reason for there. This world was meant to thrive and survive.
Yes,
if
in
left
abundance.
In abundance. Right. Although I will say, in our garden, I don't know where slugs and caterpillars come from, but they're not there one day, and then boom, they're there and fully grown like the next day. And we had some huge caterpillars, big green ones. There are like as long as my middle finger, just completely devouring entire leaves, like on the eggplant. Just whole leaf gone. And we're like, where'd they come from? Like, how did they get here? I don't know how stuff manages in the wild, but when you're doing a garden, you have to tend to it like daily. So Sheila's out there every day on bug patrol, relocating critters. But yeah, all this other stuff, though, I mean, it's completely manufactured, completely engineered, and farmers don't need to comply. If they are complying, there's a problem. And if they're trying to sue them with some kind of legal issue, making them not thrive, that's a problem. That everybody needs to rise up and do something about it. I mean, if they are engineering starvation on top of everything else that they're engineering, I mean, this just goes to show you, the Georgia Guidestones is real. There is an agenda. Depopulation is at the top of the agenda, and they are all about it. This is exactly what they're trying to do. Although I did read something interesting that the health ranger, Mike Adams, put out. I think it was yesterday, or the day before. He said, statistically speaking, more Democrats are likely to get the jab than Republicans are, which means, if that's true, they're going to basically be winners of the Darwin Award.
Right.
And they're going to just wipe themselves out. And I was like, well, that is interesting, because, it is predominantly Democrats that are putting forward all this craziness. And they're the ones that are buying into the propaganda. So they're the ones that are going to take more of it than Republicans or everybody else. So, they're going to kind of self-exterminate, it looks like. I hadn't thought about it that way. Mike Adams made a pretty reasonable case for it. I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. The whole liberal mindset, they seem to be more open to this and that, and certainly there's a lot of sides being chosen and people holding on to supporting those kind of sides, towing the line for this and other things.
Yeah, people in the chat room are trying to help out there. I know about the soap, dish soap. You're supposed to. Some people say use dish soap on the plants. I don't want to do that because that's like I don't want to eat that. The plants are eating that. If the plants are soaking that, I don't want to eat that. But we do have, somebody else mentioned diatomaceous earth. We just got a big bag of that, and Sheila's got this little squeegee thing that just kind of you squish it and it just sprays a cloud of dust of the.
That's awesome.
So that helps certainly with the smaller critters anyway, the little mites and whatnot.
Right.
It's
supposedly vinegar is supposed to be, one of those non-harmful, non-toxic in some manner, to help with plants and to keep critters away. But I'm certainly no authority on any of that.
Yeah, neither am I. I had ambitions of creating a whole website called Black Thumb Gardening, but this was just one million to-do things that I'll never get to because I got too many other things taking part of it. On the positive note, though, how I had submitted seed to a lot of different film festivals. I submitted last month, and they're going to be held throughout the year. I mean, they're scheduled throughout the rest of the year, but a few of them have just started already this week, and already have won 2 awards. I've got one best web pilot for the Chicago Film Festival, and
that is awesome.
One honorable mention and a quarterly finalist or something like that for the world's greatest screenplay contest. So for the first script. So yeah, and those are just the first 2 that have happened. There's still about 20 different categories left to be judged, and about 16 other or 15 other film festivals that haven't happened yet. So yeah, pretty excited. June and July are big months. In August, June, July, and August are big months for most of the film festivals. Then there's a couple in October, and then one in December, and then a few pushed off to March and May of next year. But yeah, so for the next 2 months, man, I'm hoping that it continues to do well, get a lot more exposure.
I definitely think it will. And there's going to be a lot of accolades coming down the line and recognition, and then there's such great appeal with the storyline and then the giants, because even for people that are not tuned in to the biblical, esoteric, alternative truth side of what's going on in world, still the whole theme of giants has been presented in a lot of different places, especially now with the ancient aliens and that whole concept, and how even though we know this is part of the New World Order Antichrist agenda, still it is a concept that is being pushed out there, and that a lot of people are now becoming aware of the whole theme of Genesis 6 and the weird idiosyncrasies that are connected to all of that as truth and revelation. So
yeah, I've had some good conversations with one of my other writers, a new guy that came on board just a few months ago. He was a MP in the Air Force and worked with Special Forces guys. He's a few years older. I'm not sure exactly how old he is, but he was doing stuff in the 70s in the military. So I wasn't doing stuff until the 80s. So he's got to be at least 10 years older. But yeah, man, it's another total kindred spirit. It's like, 2 brothers from different mothers, but we're tracking along the same lines on a lot of different things. And it's like every time we have a conversation, we're just brainstorming like crazy. And so he's he's writing right now. I've been trying to teach myself 3D software, even software that I already have and that I thought I was fairly proficient in. There's so much that I didn't know.
Right.
And so that's been what's keeping me busy. It's like, and the day just flies by. I can't believe it. It's like I'm, working on modeling characters and stuff like that. Next thing you know, it's like 11 o'clock at night. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
the whole day's gone.
Yeah.
But it's been fun. And
At least you're learning,
Yeah, I'm banned on Facebook for 30 days. So this is so
Gives
actually
you some time.
Yeah, it's actually made me very productive.
Right.
So,
yeah. Well, excellent. Do you remember where we had left off?
Yep.
You were gonna pick up on something.
Yeah. Well, last week we read Joshua 44, which I believe caught us up in the Joshua account, and of course, you read from the Targum and the Legend of the Jews, and I read from Jubilees 36 through 39, which gets us caught up to Genesis. So my thought would be that we start with Genesis 40. That's a pretty short chapter, so I could read 40 and 41 probably before the break.
All right.
And then come back and do the Targum, and then jump. I know the Joshua account gets really cool because it's the 70 steps and the languages and all that cool stuff. So
yeah, the Legends of the Jews covers that pretty in depth as well. So
nice.
All right, sounds good.
I'll jump over to King Jimmy here, chapter 40, Genesis chapter 40. And it came to pass after these things that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was wroth against two of his officers, against the chief of the butlers and against the chief of the bakers. And he put them in ward in the house of the captain of the guard into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them, and they continued a season in ward. And they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man his dream in one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, which were bound in the prison. And Joseph came in unto them in the morning and looked upon them, and behold, they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the ward of the Lord's house, saying, Wherefore look ye so sadly today? And they said unto him, We have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, I do not interpretation. Sorry. He said, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you. And the chief butler told his dream to Joseph and said to him, In my dream, behold, a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded, but her blossoms shot forth, and the clusters thereof brought forth ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said unto him, This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. And within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head and restore thee unto thy place, and thou shalt deliver Pharaoh's cup into his hand after the former manner when thou wast his butler. But think on me when it shall be well with thee, and show kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also have I done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said unto Joseph, I also was in my dream, and behold, I had 3 white baskets on my head. And in the uppermost basket there was all manner of baked meats for Pharaoh, and the birds did eat them out of the basket upon my head. And Joseph answered and said, This is the interpretation thereof. The 3 baskets are 3 days, yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thy head from off thee, and shall hang thee upon on a tree, and the birds shall eat thy flesh from off thee. That's a bummer, dude. And it came to pass the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast unto all his servants, and he lifted up his head of the chief butler. He lifted up the head of the chief butler and of the chief baker among his servants. And he restored the chief butler unto his butlership again, and he gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgat him. And it came to pass, at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. And behold, there came out up out of the river 7 well-favored kine and fat-fleshed, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kine upon the brink of the river. And the ill-favored and lean-fleshed kine did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kine. So Pharaoh awoke, and he slept and dreamed the second time. And behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good. And behold, 7 thin ears, and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank and full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. Then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my faults this day. Pharaoh was wroth with his servants, and put me in ward in the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream in one night, and I and he, we dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was there with us a young man, a Hebrew, servant of the captain of the guard. And we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams, and each man according to his dream he did interpret. And it came to pass, as he interpreted to us, so it was. Me he restored unto thine office, and him he hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. And he shaved himself and changed his raiment, and came in unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, In my dream, behold, I stood upon the bank of the river. And behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine, fat-fleshed and well-favored, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them, poor and very ill-favored and lean-fleshed, such as I never saw in all the land of Egypt for badness. And the lean and the ill-favored kine did eat up the first 7 fat kine. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them, but they were still ill-favored as at the beginning. So I awoke. And I saw my dream, and behold, 7 ears came up in one stalk, full and good. And behold, 7 ears withered thin, and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. And I told this unto the magicians, but there was none that could declare it to me. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, The dream of Pharaoh is one. God hath shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. And the 7 thin and ill-favored kine that came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty ears blasted with the east wind shall be 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he showeth unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, and there shall arise after them 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land, and the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of that famine, for it shall be very grievous. And for that the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. It is because the thing is established by God, and God shall shortly bring it to pass. Now therefore let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years. And let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. And that food shall be store for the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, Can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Forasmuch as God hath shown thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house, and according to unto all thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne shall I be greater than thou. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, See, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had. And they cried before him, Bow the knee. And he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath Paneah. And he gave him a wife, Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. And in the 7 plenteous years, the earth brought forth by handfuls. And he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities. The food of the field, which was round about every city, laid he up in the same. And Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea, very much, until he left numbering, for it was without number. And unto Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, which Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bare unto him. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God said, He hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second called he Ephraim, for God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. And the 7 years of plenteous that was in the land of Egypt were ended, and the 7 years of dearth began to come, according as Joseph had said. And the dearth was in all the lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, Go unto Joseph, what he saith to you do. And the famine was over all the face of the earth. And Joseph opened up all the storehouses and sold unto the Egyptians. And the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. And all countries came unto Egypt to Joseph to buy corn, because that the famine was so sore in all the lands. And that's probably, we got 3 minutes before break. So that's a good place to stop. I've been wondering if, Isaiah 46:10 says that God has declared the end from the beginning. And having been studying the Torah every year for over a decade now, very early on, I think it was the second cycle when we were going through it, began to realize that the plagues of Egypt in the book of Exodus are directly parallel to the plagues of Revelation. Revelation is just an amped up repeat. And when I started looking at the tribulation period and started considering what is said in the book of Numbers, I became convinced the book of Numbers is a play-by-play roadmap for understanding the tribulation period. That everything in the end is just an amped up repeat of the beginning. So considering the things that we were bantering about at the beginning of this broadcast, it makes me wonder, if we're going to have this feast and famine situation. I don't know that we had 7 years of plenty. I know that, we didn't really lack for much. Yahuwah was always faithful in providing for us over the past 7 years. But man, it certainly looks like we're headed into a season of not so good, situation, both financially as well as the stuff with the food that we're talking about. And, nobody knows what the side effects are going to be from the jab. It's way too early to tell. Probably within a year or so, we're going to start seeing lots of manifestations of that, I would imagine. So, it makes me wonder, is this a foretelling of what we're about to enter into?
I definitely think it is. And and even in the scriptures, it speaks about in Revelation a time of plenty. And then how, even the amount of bread that a person works for over the course of a day, how that diminishes. And also in the Revelation of St. John, the theologian, it mentions and speaks about how there will be a a time of where the rains dissipate, and that there's and it reminds me of the chemtrails, and how storms and how they spray before the storms come, and in a lot of areas this is producing drought and making it to where the crops are diminishing. And then we see things like what we were speaking about earlier, with farmers being paid to decimate their crops, things like that. And so whether artificial or not, I do see these things coming. We'll be right back, everyone.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased, as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
In a world, it can feel like we are studying alone. So together with you, Sacred Word Publishing classes has begun. Are you interested in Biblical Hebrew, the Enochian calendar, extra biblical texts, or other esoteric topics? Join any class for free. Or do you have research you'd like to share with fellow truth seekers? We'd love to help you set up a class. As students, we also have an opportunity to be teachers, and whichever role you're settled into today, we'll be happy to study with you at swpclass.com. Email us at sacredwordpublishingllc@gmail.com with your class ideas, and we look forward to learning with you. See you in class! With commerce being monopolized by major corporations, we feel a responsibility to return to handmade goods and to support individuals in the community. Sacred Word Publishing wants to encourage truth seekers to support each other, and one of the best ways we can do that is through offering this centralized marketplace where everyone's homemade products can be easily accessed by our fellow members in the body of Christ. Would you be interested in offering your handcrafted items in our store? Email us at sacredwordpublishingllc@gmail.com. Support the truth-seeking community by going to www.swpmarket.com. Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
Their sons became of old Greek men of renown. So they have been mixing with us on a genetic level since the time of Enoch and Ezekiel's will.
Here on Earth we're intrigued by the sun, moon, and stars, and imagine there's got to be planets like ours. So conceive of a face on the surface of Mars, so in need of a meaning and purpose we've lost. And indeed they believe that these these might be our gods, or that maybe with time we'll do right and evolve and eventually reach what they seek and then solve all the problems of man. But they really don't know that they fall, and the works of our hands are but just filthy rags. So we travel the lands to dig up our past. Time elapses, and with it are much of the facts. Some imagine that gods came in alien class.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. And we were talking about before the break about how in the end times and in the scriptures, especially in a lot of the extra biblical material found in the Great Commission 3, which is about the end time apocalypses, there's many mentions of how, as Rob had made mention of, that there's a time of plenty and then a time of diminishing capacity where there seems to be starvation and struggle and economic situation where people are not finding enough to eat and not being taken care of in a manner that, you know, there's easy abundance, if you could, you know, say it that way. And then and so I do believe that a lot of what is seen in scripture is also what we are already having seen foreshadowed in the way that the elites and the New World Order are, you know, just like with what is on the Georgia Guidestones and those things which have been written down for a very long time. We see that even with the vaccine situation now and with the way that things are playing out, that a lot of that is coming to pass. Their agenda is set and is playing out. And people are going to have to recognize that and, you know, become aware of it so that they can prepare themselves and their families for those things that are coming. Because certainly the agenda is not hidden. It's in your face and it's all out there for people that, you know, are willing to look, listen, and to become aware.
Yeah, definitely. All right. You want to read the Targum?
I will go into the Targum. Let me go ahead and share this with you as well. Okay. There it is. Okay. And after these things it was shown, saying, the chief of the butlers of the king of Mizraim and the chief of the bakers have offended, having taken counsel to throw the poison of death into his food and into his drink, to kill their master the king of Mizraim. And Pharaoh was angry when he had heard concerning his two servants, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. And he gave them in ward in the house of the chief executioner, and the prison house where Joseph was confined. And the chief executioner entrusted Joseph with them, and he served them, and they were certain days in the house of custody. And they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man his dream, and one night each man his own dream, and the interpretation of his companion's dream. The butler and the baker of the king of Mizraim, who were confined in the prison. And Joseph came to them in the morning, and saw them, and behold, they were troubled. And Joseph asked the chief of Pharaoh, who were with him in the custody of his master's house, saying, why is the look of your faces more evil today than all the other days that you have been here? And they said to him, we have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter for it. And Joseph answered, Are not the interpretations of dreams from the Lord? Tell it now to me. And the chief of the butlers related his dream to Joseph and said to him, I saw in my dream, and behold, a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches. And as it sprouted, it brought forth buds, and immediately they ripened into clusters and became grapes. And I gave the cup of Pharaoh into my hand, and I took the grapes and expressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said to him, This is the end of the interpretation of the dream. The 3 branches are the 3 fathers of the world, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the children of whose sons are to be enslaved in Mizraim, in clay and brick work, and in all labor of the face of the field. But afterwards shall they be delivered by the hand of the 3 shepherds. As thou hast said, I took the grapes and expressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. It is the vial of wrath which Pharaoh himself is to drink at the last. But thou, the chief butler, shalt receive a good reward concerning the good dream which thou hast dreamed. And the interpretation of it to thyself is this: the 3 branches are 3 days until thy liberation. At the end of 3 days, the memory of thee will come before Pharaoh, and he will lift up thy head with honor, and restore thee to thy service. And thou wilt give the cup of Pharaoh into his hand, according to thy former custom, in pouring out for him Jerusalem. And Joseph said, This is the interpretations of the dream. The 3 branches are the 3 fathers of the world, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the children of whose sons will be enslaved in the land of Mizraim, and will be delivered by the hand of 3 faithful pastors, who may be likened to the clusters. And whereas thou hast said, I took the grapes and expressed them into the cup of Pharaoh, and gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. It is the cup of retribution, which Pharaoh is to drink at the last. As to thyself, the chief of the butlers, thou wilt not lose thy reward, for this dream which thou hast dreamed is good. Nevertheless, the interpretation of the dream, as relating to himself, Joseph had not told him, but afterwards he explained it when it pleased him. And Joseph said to him, The 3 branches are 3 days. Joseph, leaving his higher trust and retaining confidence in a man, said to the chief butler, But be thou mindful of me when it shall be well with thee, and act kindly by me, and remember me before Pharaoh, and obtain my deliverance from this prison house. For I was verily carried away dishonestly from the land of the Hivrei, and there also I have done nothing evil, that they should put me in prison. And the chief baker, when he understood the interpretation of his companion's dream, seeing that he had interpreted well, began to speak with an impatient tongue, and said to Joseph, I also saw in my dream, and behold, 3 baskets of fine cakes were upon my head, Jerusalem. And behold, 3 baskets of hot loaves were upon my head, and in the upper basket of all delicious meat for Pharaoh, made by the confectioner, and the birds ate them from the basket upon my head. Joseph answered and said, this is its interpretation. The three baskets are the three enslavements with which the house of Israel are to be enslaved. But thou, the chief of the bakers, wilt receive an evil award by the dream which thou hast dreamed. And Joseph explained it as it was proper in his eyes, and said to him, this is its interpretation. To thyself, the three baskets are 3 days until thy death. At the end of 3 days, Pharaoh with the sword will take away thy head from thy body, and will hang thee upon a gibbet. And the birds will cut thy flesh from thee, Jerusalem. And he said to him, the three baskets are the three heavy enslavements which are to happen to the house of Israel in the land of Mizraim, in clay and in bricks and all work on the face of the field. It will be that Pharaoh, king of Mizraim, will decree evil decrees against Israel and throw their children into the river. Nevertheless, Pharaoh will perish and his host be destroyed. But the sons of Israel will go forth, redeemed with uncovered head. And thou, the chief of the bakers, will receive punishment. For this dream which thou hast dreamed is evil. But the interpretation of the dream Joseph did not at once make known to him, but afterwards Joseph expounded it when it pleased him. And Joseph said to him, this is the interpretation of the dream. The three baskets are 3 days. And it was on the third day of the nativity of Pharaoh that he made a feast to all his servants. And he lifted up the head of the chief butler and the head of the chief baker in the midst of his servants. And he restored the chief butler to his butlership, because he found he had not been in that council. And he gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand, but the chief baker he hanged, because he had taken counsel to kill him, even as Joseph had expounded to them. But because Joseph had withdrawn from the mercy that is above, and had put his confidence in the chief butler, he waited on the flesh. Therefore the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him, until from the Lord came the time of the end, that he should be released. Jerusalem. Joseph left the mercy above and the mercy beneath, and the mercy which accompanied him from his father's house, and put his confidence in the chief butler. He trusted in the flesh, and the flesh he tasted of, even the cup of death. Neither did he remember the scripture where it is written expressly, cursed shall be the man who trusteth in the flesh, and setteth the flesh as his confidence. Blessed shall the man who trusteth in the name of the word of the Lord, and whose confidence is the word of the Lord. Therefore, the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him until the time of the end came that he should be released. It was at the end of 2 years that the remembrance of Joseph came before the word of the Lord. And Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river, and behold, from the river came up 7 oxen, good looking and fat fleshed, and they grazed in the midst of the sedges. Jerusalem, grazing in the midst of the sedges. And behold, 7 other oxen came up from the river, evil looking and lean in their flesh, and stood by the side of the oxen on the bank of the river. And the evil looking and the lean flesh oxen devoured the 7 good looking and fat, and Pharaoh awoke from his sleep. And he slept and saw a second dream. And behold, 7 ears arose on one stalk, full and good. And behold, 7 ears, thin and blighted, with the east wind, sprang up after them. And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 fat and full. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And in the morning his spirit was troubled. And he sent and called all the magicians of Mizraim and all the wise men. And Pharaoh told them the dreams, but no man was able to interpret it, for it was occasioned by the Lord, because the time had come that Joseph should come forth from the house of the bound. And the chief of the cupbearers spake before Pharaoh, saying, My faults do I remember this day. It was occasioned from the Lord that Pharaoh was angry with his servants, and he put me in ward in the house of the chief executioner, me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream in one night, I and he, the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream in one night, I and he, each man his own dream, and the interpretation of his companion's dream. We dreamed, and there was with us a Hebrew youth, a servant of the chief executioner. And we recounted to him, and he explained the dream to us. To each man he explained the interpretation of his dream. And even as he interpreted to us, so it was. Me he restored in his sentence, and to the order of my service, and him he hanged. And Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and hastened him from the prison. And he dressed his hair, changed his garments, and went unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter for it. And I have heard of thee, saying, that if thou hear a dream, thou canst explain it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is without me. It is not man who interprets dreams, but from before the Lord shall be an answer of peace unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh spake with Joseph, saying, I saw in my dream, and behold, I stood on the bank of the river, and behold, from the river came up 7 oxen, fat-fleshed and good-looking, and they grazed in the midst of the sedges. And behold, 7 other oxen came up after them, wasted and very evil-looking, and lean in their flesh. I have not seen the like of them in all of the land of Mizraim. or badness. And the wasted and evil oxen devoured the first 7 fat oxen, and they entered into their stomach. But it could not be known that they had entered into their stomach, for their appearance was evil, as before. And I awoke, and I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears arose on one stalk, full and good, and behold, 7 ears withered, thin, blighted, with the east wind, sprang up after them. And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. And I told the magicians, but there is no one who can teach me. And Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is one. That which the Lord is about to do, he showeth to Pharaoh. The 7 good oxen announce 7 years, and the 7 good ears announce also those 7 years. The dream is one, and the 7 wasted and evil oxen, which arose after them, announced 7 other years. And the 7 ears thin and blighted, with the east wind likewise, make known that there will be 7 years of famine. This is the word that I speak to Pharaoh. What the Lord is about to do, he showeth Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty in all the land of Mizraim. And after them will arise 7 years of famine, which will make all the plenty that was in the land of Mizraim to be forgotten. And the famine will consume the inhabitants of the land, neither will the plenty which had been in the land be known for the famine that will be afterward, because it will be exceeding strong. And for as much as the dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice, therefore is the thing confirmed before the Lord, and the Lord hastened to doeth it. But now let Pharaoh look out a man prudent and wise, and appoint him over the land of Mizraim. Let Pharaoh make superintendents over the land, and let them take out 1 part in 5 of all the produce of the land of Mizraim in the 7 years of plenty, Jerusalem. Let Pharaoh make and appoint him as superintendent over the land, and let him set apart 1 in 5 throughout the land of Mizraim in the 7 years of plenty, and let them collect all the produce of those good years that are coming, and gather together the produce of the years that are coming, and gather together the produce under the hand of Pharaoh's superintendents, and set the produce in the cities to be kept, and there will be provision laid up as in a cavern in the earth, that therefrom they may take in the years of famine which come up the land of Mizraim, that the people of the land perish not through the famine. And the word was good before Pharaoh and before all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find a man like this, in whom is the spirit of prophecy from the Lord? And Pharaoh said to Joseph, since the Lord hath made known all this to thee, there is no one so prudent and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be superintendent over my house, and by the decree of thy mouth shall all my people be armed. Only in the throne of the kingdom will I be greater than thou. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, See, I have appointed thee prince over the land of Mizraim. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and set it on Joseph's hand. And he clothed him in vestments of fine linen and set a collar of gold upon his neck and made him ride in the second chariot of Pharaoh. And they chanted before him, This is the father of the king, great in wisdom, few in years. All right, we'll be right back for the second portion, second hour. Be right back, everyone.
Truth Frequency Radio is your #1 source for news and information without the hate, hype, and fear. We're proud to feature cutting-edge programs like The Christopher Everard Show, The Covert Report with Susan Lindauer, Enemy Within Radio with Tom Barnes, Freaky Friday with The Woo Crew, The Gematria Effect with Zachary Hubbard, America's Evil Genius with Travis Cook, Phoenix Rising Radio with Phoenix, Quantum Connections with Lucky, and dozens more. Did you know you can listen from any telephone by dialing 641-793-7117 or call into your favorite show toll free at 833-T.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
In a world where we are ridiculed for questioning mainstream narrative, it can feel like we are studying alone. So together with you, Sacred Word Publishing classes has begun. Are you interested in biblical Hebrew, the Noachian calendar, extra biblical texts, or other esoteric topics? Join any class for free. Or do you have research you'd like to share with fellow truth seekers? We'd love to help you set up a class. As students, we also have an opportunity to be teachers. And whichever role you're settled into today, we'll be happy to study with you at swpclass.com. Email us at sacredwordpublishingllc@gmail.com with your class ideas, and we look forward to learning with you. See you in class.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
There shall be in that time abundance of corn and wine, such as there hath never been upon the earth, nor shall ever be until those times come. Then the ear of corn shall produce a half a shonix, and the bend of the branch shall produce 1,000 clusters, and the clusters shall produce a half a jar of wine. And in the following year there shall not be found upon the face of all the earth a half a shonix of corn, or a half a jar of wine. And again I said, Lord, thereafter what wilt thou do? And I heard a voice saying to me, Hear, righteous John, then shall appear the denier, and he who is set apart in the darkness, who is called Antichrist. That's from the Revelation of St. John, the theologian. Care to comment on that at all, Prof, before I move on?
No, it is interesting, though, that you're reading from the Targum, right?
Well, no, that was from the Revelation of St. John, the theologian. It's
No.
a companion book from the Ante-Nicene Church Fathers. It's a companion book for the Revelation of the Bible.
No, I mean before you're reading from the
Oh,
Targum.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was just gonna, because I know you got to finish it, but I was just gonna say, wow, it's really. I mean, we've known it to elaborate before, but man, like it's like they've added like chapters to the chapters. You know,
Right. Yeah.
With the dreams all being related to Israel, which that doesn't really make much sense, but I don't know. It's interesting stuff, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's again why I love to read from and to consider the parallel account of the Targum, because it does seem to have a greater detail. But yeah, I'll continue.
Cool.
This is the father of the king, great in wisdom, few in years, and he appointed him prince over all the land of Mizraim, Jerusalem. And they chanted before him and said, Live the father of the king, great in wisdom and few in years. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, the king, and thou art vice-regent. And without thy word a man shall not lift up his hand to gird on arms, or his foot to mount a horse in all the land of Mizraim. And Pharaoh called the name of Joseph, the man who revealeth mysteries. And he gave him Asenath, whom Dinah had borne to Shechem, and the wife of Potiphar, prince Rabbah of Tanis, had brought up to be his wife. And Joseph went forth ruler over the land of Mizraim. And Joseph was a son of 30 years when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Mizraim. And Joseph went out from Pharaoh and passed a prince and a ruler through all the land of Mizraim. And the earth so brought forth that every blade made 2 handsful in the 7 years of plenty, until all the granaries were full. And they gathered all the produce of the 7 years of plenty which were in the land of Mizraim. And he laid up the produce in the cities, and the produce of the fields which were round about a city he laid up therein. And to Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of the famine arose, which Asenath, who had been brought up in the house of Potiphar, prince of Tanis, bare to him. And Joseph called the name of his firstborn Manasseh, because the Lord hath made me forget all my weariness in all the house of my father. And the name of the second he called Ephraim, for he said, The Lord hath made me mighty in the land of my affliction, as he will make the house of my father mighty here in their affliction. And the 7 years of plenty were completed, which were to come in the land of Mizraim. And the 7 years of famine began to be, as Joseph had said. And there was famine in all lands in all the land of Mizraim there was bread, and all the land of Mizraim had dearth, because the seed wheat bare no fruit. And the people cried before Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said to all the Mizraim, Go to Joseph, and what he shall tell you do. And the famine was upon all the face of the land. And Joseph opened up all the treasures and sold to the Mizraim. And the famine waxed mighty in the land of Mizraim. And all the inhabitants of the earth came into Mizraim to buy provision of Joseph, for the famine was mighty in all the earth.
Okay. Yeah, that was pretty interesting that Asenath was the daughter of Dinah and Shechem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think we may have talked.
Yeah, we spoke about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Seems like I remember having a conversation about it at some point. But,
right.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, because she was Hebrew, and because of the rape that had taken place, they gave her up for adoption, so that she would be, taken in by Potiphar, and that this whole theme of Joseph marrying her and continuing and having a bride of the
Hebrew stock.
Is of his father's household. From his sister, that played out in perfection. And for people that have never read the apocryphal book, the Joseph and Asenath, it is really one of the most remarkable love stories in the book of the Bible, in the books of the Bible, and it goes into great account of her stress in being raised as an idol worshiper, and how she gave it all up, put on sackcloth, put ashes on her head, and threw out all her idols and all of her wealth, turned her back on her upbringing. And then the angel of the Lord came to her and it made her clean and prepared her to be a wife and a bride for Joseph. It's an amazing, beautiful story.
Wow, it sounds like that sounds like something I would definitely like to check out.
Oh yeah, you should definitely check it out.
Dinah would have been what, Joseph's aunt?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because she was the sister of the others.
So she was one of Jacob's. She was a daughter of Jacob.
Yes.
A daughter of a son of Jacob. I can't remember.
No, I think she was the daughter of Jacob. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, so she. Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay, so he married his niece then.
Seemingly so.
Yeah. Although
if I'm correct, I may not be recounting it correctly, but
yeah, I don't remember.
I do believe that she was like Simeon and Judah. They were, her brothers.
Because they said, they did this to our sister.
Right.
So, well, yeah, because Joseph was of Rachel, so
right.
Even though Dinah had the same father, she had a different mother than Joseph did.
Right.
So then she was raped by Shechem, so they gave the child up for adoption because they didn't want to have to deal with that. And the child ended up in Egypt, raised by Potiphar or whatever.
Yeah, Potiphar. And they, Jacob being a prophet, he had foreseen all this as well. And that's, another reason why he never believed Joseph to have died, when they presented him the vesture dipped in blood. he knew that he was still alive. According to some of the stories.
Yeah, according to some, because like in Genesis and even in I think it was in Joshua, either Joshua or Jubilee.
He wept.
Yeah, he was definitely, he was like, I'm gonna, my gray hairs to the grave.
Right. Right.
But yeah, that's a trip, man. So Joseph married his niece, which redeemed her effectively.
Right. Yeah.
It's interesting to me though, because it wouldn't be an issue because or would it? No, nobody from the line of Joseph is an ancestor of Yeshua that I'm aware of. Because Judah had Perez through Tamar.
Right, through Tamar.
She's the ancestor ultimately of David.
Yes.
And so then
the
you have
stem of Jesse. Yeah.
The stem of Jesse, and the branch of David later, being Yeshua.
Right. Right.
So, because my thought was, well, wasn't because Shechem was a Canaanite, but
right.
It's not really. Even that's okay though. If you're dealing with the women, it's not okay when you're dealing with the men. That's when things get a little bit wonky, because we have an X and a Y chromosome, and women have two X chromosomes. So, my thesis about how the Nephilim came forward through the flood on the ark. If you do a simple Punnett square, it's one of those things you can do probability examples with. That if you have a 100% normal male, even if the female is a 50-50 hybrid, you still have a 50-50 chance of having a 100% normal offspring, because it would just depend on which chromosome she contributes. If she gives off her good X chromosome and it gets with a good Y chromosome from a pure male, then you got a 100% normal male. If she contributes her good X chromosome and he contributes his normal good X chromosome, then you get 100% normal female. So the genetics can get cleaned out as long as it's on the hybridizations on the female side, not on the male side. So even though Shechem would have been a male, depending on whatever percentage of a hybrid he was, Asenath would have been either partly tainted or not. Really it would depend. But his children, or the Joseph's children, would be fine. Ephraim and Manasseh. My thesis, it says that God visits the iniquity down to the third and fourth generation, but he blesses to 1,000 generations the righteous. So, my contention was, well, if you have a 50-50 chance of having either continued tainted offspring or 100% normal offspring, what determines the odds? And I would say it's obedience. Yahuwah figures out which one's going to make it, right? Which sperm is going to get through, and he knits the baby in the womb, as David talks about. So, or is it Jeremiah? I forget, one of them. So it would depend on the faithfulness of the father. So that's how it can be redeemed. So Joseph being, as righteous as he was, regardless of whether or not Asenath had anything going on because of Shechem, Ephraim and Manasseh would be fine. That would be my point.
Well, it's really interesting because, in the story of Naomi, and also in Rahab, you have seemingly this same theme coming up.
Yeah, because Boaz.
Yeah, that's very intriguing.
Yeah, right. It's the kinsman redeemer thing. As long as the male is pure, he has to. Right. He has to be both genetically pure and spiritually pure. And I would contend that there is a spiritual component to DNA also. That the DNA isn't just coding physical traits. Spiritual traits are encoded. How, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe epigenetic markers that get laid down onto epigenetics is like the real deal. Like when I was doing the Archon invasion research back in was it 2010, 9, 10, 11, that time period. That was still a fairly new field. It was still being, kind of in the beginning of being really well understood, at least in terms of what you could find online. Scientists may have been aware of epigenetics for a long time, but it wasn't making its way into documentaries and videos that you could find on YouTube and whatnot until it really started around that beginning of that time. Stephanie, I think her name's no, I was thinking Stephanie Daly, but I'm looking at the Myths from Mesopotamia. She's the author of that. I can't remember the scientist's name, but she did a TED Talk, and at that time it was a fairly new deal when she did the TED Talk, and I've incorporated her speech into my Archon Invasion videos. If people check out parts 1 and 2, I talk about that and how the epigenetics are things that can be laid down onto the DNA that it turns switches on and off on the DNA. If you think of the Gattaca, the code, the GATC, the code of DNA, that they're like switches. They're on and off switches. And so your DNA could be coded with certain patterns that are on and off, but epigenetics can get laid down on top of those, like on the ladder of the DNA, if you will, and turn an off switch on or turn an on switch off through epigenetics. So it's like it gets laid down on top of the DNA and it can affect the DNA. And so what they were realizing is that things like diet and environment and stresses and things that are external to the living creature can get imprinted onto the epigenetics, which then can effectively change the DNA itself. And so, and it was at the time I was doing the study that a friend of mine who was going through nursing school, and she either read about or was part of a study or something. Anyway, when I was sharing my research with our small group, she's like, "This is fascinating," because she had I don't remember if she actually participated in this study or read it in her class or whatever it was, but she was telling me about a story of a study that was done. They called them poor lifestyle decisions. We would say sin, but they're doing case studies of people like that were like prisoners and stuff, that people who were incarcerated for murder or people who had committed adultery or thieves or whatnot. And they had them in these different like focus groups. And what they had figured out was that everybody that had committed murder, they all had a certain genetic marker that was detectable on their DNA in the same location.
Wow.
So like everybody who committed murder had a marker in the same general location on their DNA, but it was different from people who were, let's say, convicted of thievery or adultery. They all also had within their groups had markers in the same place for each poor lifestyle decision or sin, but it was in a different location than the other lifestyle decision or sin. Do you follow? So it's like an adulterer had, the group of adulterers all had a mark, but it was in the same place for that group, but it was different from the place that the murderers had. And I thought, wow, that's so. In the case study, they were trying to figure out, is this because of the poor lifestyle decision, or did this give them a genetic predisposition to make the poor lifestyle decision? So the study was trying to determine, are murderers genetically prone to become murderers, genetically speaking, or did the act of committing murder alter their DNA? And either way, it confirms the scripture, the sins of the past. So I think it's a both and. I don't think it has to be an either or. I think if you have somebody who, let's say, doesn't have any of those markers on their DNA, but they make a poor decision, they kill somebody, they get a marker, and then they procreate, and then that marker gets passed down to the third and fourth, all the way down to the third and fourth generation. So then that's why you could have entire families of people who have trouble with addiction. Your father was an alcoholic. Well, guess what? You're going to have a predisposition to having that problem. Until somebody, and this is what I'd love to see happen that I'm not aware of having ever been done, would just see, like, let's say you do a focus group of everybody to determine, okay, all these murderers, they all have a genetic marker laid down, whether epigenetically or through their decision to sin. and commit murder, what happens when they get saved? And so it made me think that,
Right.
Paul says that if any man be in Christ,
Yes.
he is a new creature.
Mhm.
All things have passed away, and behold, all things have become new. That it's just my theory. I can't prove this. I have never seen a study on this, but I suspect that you get, when we say we get washed in the blood, so to speak,
Right.
that it is a genetic cleaning, because you have taken on, spiritually speaking, the blood of Christ, that purchased our salvation. So where, it says life is in the blood, and he gave his life
Right.
that he might have salvation. So it's like,
Yes.
so he died physically, but yet it has a spiritual ramification for us who believe in him. So
Right.
this is why I'm like, when it comes to the jab, I'm like, guys, not only is it physically jacking you up, but we don't know what it's doing to people spiritually.
Exactly. Yeah.
There have been reports of people saying, I can't feel God anymore. That, they feel like they've lost, something that they can't quite put their finger on,
Mhm.
This is why it's so dangerous. And I'm like, look, guys, I know enough about computers to navigate the software that I work in. But as I just said at the beginning of the broadcast, there's software I've been playing with for a long time that I'm learning, man, I didn't have no clue that did that. And like, I'm learning how much more there is to the software that I've barely tapped into. I've tapped into 10,
Right.
20% of the software, and it can do 80, 90% more than what I knew it could do. That's what our DNA is like. It's like we've barely scratched the surface of, they said forever, 90% or 80% junk DNA. We don't have junk DNA. They just don't know what it does.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
So we're messing with stuff. This would be like me, if all of a sudden I got it to C++, hey, wow, I know how to do that now. And I just started inserting code into Photoshop. I'm going to jack it up. I'm going to probably the first line of code I write, I won't be able to open the software anymore. I'm going to totally, completely mess up otherwise functional software if I got in there and start messing with code without knowing what I'm doing. And that's exactly what scientists are doing. And people are lining up to go put codes in their body that
Right.
nobody really truly understands. It's never been tested. And physically, what's it going to do to you, and spiritually, what's it going to do? That's my big concern. Anyway, I'll get off my
Right.
soapbox, but
Well, let me just say one last thing with regard to what you just brought up, because it's fascinating to me how now, understanding the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, that looking back through all the really detailed lists of genealogies, like a lot of people haven't even considered that there is an entire account of the genealogical list, the heritage of Yeshua and Mary in the Cave of Treasures, and also in the Book of the Bee, that most people have never really looked into, studied in great detail, but how these kind of things are preserved for those that have the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and a mind to understand. And even like, when Naomi left, and she was the sister of Orpah, and Orpah is the one that brought forth the brothers Goliath and his giant bloodline, and so they were cousins to David. And so
wait, say that again.
Yeah, Orpah, Naomi, when she left, from that land, and went back to the land of her, the Hebrews with Ruth, and Ruth ended up marrying Boaz. Orpah is the mother of the brothers Goliath and the other giants that are mentioned.
What? That's crazy. I never heard that before.
Yeah, you can. There's a book called As and So It Is, or As It Comes to Pass, and it's about the history of David and Solomon, and it speaks about. Remember, I had shared with you the story of Benaiah and how he had killed the lion men of Moab. That's one of the stories preserved in there. But there's also a story of Yishbi, who's one of the brothers of Goliath, and how he had the opportunity to kill David when he went out hunting and got lost. And Orpah was also part of that story. But anyways, it makes mention, of how they are related. They're like cousins.
What?
Yeah.
That's
So
crazy.
yeah, it's all crazy.
So
But
Goliath is like a fourth cousin or something of David.
yeah, yeah. And then it was after this particular event and this particular story happened that they no longer let David go out and fight. That they then kept him and protected him, preserved him from all that. All right, we'll be right back, everyone, for final segment.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased, as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com. Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses,
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible?
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Check out swpcalendar.com to see when to join us next for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
welcome back everybody for the final segment. I did look up something, and with the connection to Orpah, and it's mentioned in the Midrash and the Aggadah about her connections to Naomi. So I'll just read this really quickly. It says, Orpah is one of the secondary characters of the book of Ruth, which tells the reader only that she was Naomi's second daughter-in-law, like her sister-in-law Ruth. She initially wanted to accompany Naomi and return with her to her land, but unlike Ruth, she finally accepted her mother-in-law's arguments and went back to Moab. The rabbinic expansion of this narrative, which relates both to Orpah's actions and to her descendants, points her in generally unfavorable light. The rabbis maintained that Orpah and Ruth were sisters, the daughters of King Eglon of Moab, who in turn, according to the same Midrash, was the son of Balak. Ruth's descent from these kings is regarded as a mark of their merit, while no mention is made of Orpah in this context. Rabbi Meir emphasizes the fact that Orpah and Ruth did not convert during their marriages to the two brothers, but remained Moabitesses, which is one of the reasons given for the punishment meted out to the brothers. Another tradition has them converting during the course of their marriages, but maintains that Orpah returned to her people and her God. It's mentioned in the Zohar Hadash, Ruth 78a. The negative attitude to Orpah is also reflected in the fact that her husband, Chilton, is depicted more unfavorably than his brother Molon, related to the word Mahila, which means pardon. Ruth's husband, Chilton's name, is given the etymology of Kiliah, destruction, and adding to his disgrace the Philistine Goliath, who was killed by David, issued from Orpah.
Wow.
Just a little bit more here. Orpah's departure from Naomi is seen as proper, and she and her offspring were rewarded for the considerable way that she accompanied Naomi. However, once she had taken her leave of her mother-in-law, her subsequent actions are deemed extremely negative. She is said to have lain that very night with 100 men and even with a dog. The Philistine Goliath, who fought the young David during the battle in the valley of Elah, was born of this promiscuous activity. Orpah's wanton behavior is said to be characteristic of her, and one of the exegeses of her name describes such conduct. Orpah, because everyone ground her like bruised corn. The last part is about her offspring. It says, the rabbis identified the Orpah mentioned in the book of Ruth with the Rapha, the mother of the 4 warriors of Gath, who appear in 2 Samuel 2:1, and Goliath from Gath, while the Goliath who fought David in 1 Samuel 17. According to this identification, both Goliath and the other warriors are therefore Orpah's children. These men, with their special powers, were the recompense for the manner in which Orpah parted from Naomi. In the version of the Midrash in BT Sanhedrin 95a, Orpah also aided her son Ishbin Benov in his battle with David and Abishai, and even died during the course of this fight. That's the story that I made mention of. BT Sata connects the death of the sons of Orpah at the hands of David and his servants with these opponents' respective mothers. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law Ruth, chapter 1, verse 14. But Ruth clung to her, Ibid. May the sons of the one who kissed come and fall by the hand of the sons of the one who clung, which is BT Sata 42b. The last portion is about her name. The rabbis offered different explanation for Orpah's name in accordance with the various facets of her character. One interpretation is appropriate for the tableau in the Bible. She is called Orpah because she turned her back on her mother-in-law, and thus her actions is in keeping with her character and reveals her true personality. Additionally, etymologically, explanations are likewise connected with her deeds. It is written in 2 Samuel 21, verse 18, Harafa, and is written Orpah. Rav and Samuel once said that her name was Harafa. Then why was she called Orpah? Because everyone engaged in intercourse with her from the rear, and the other said her name was Orpah, then her like bruised corn. So I guess she was sleeping with a lot of different people. And so I'll just stop there with regard to, but just wanted to share a little bit as far as the connections with her children and Goliath and his brothers.
Yeah, you said something right before the break about David being withheld from fighting anymore.
Yeah, in the story, because what had happened is not only did Orpah try to kill Abishai, who was the one that went out to free David, but also Yishbin-Bob, or he's called Yishbi in this particular story. He was one of the brothers, and he also had an opportunity to kill David, but he was supernaturally protected until Abishai was able to get there and to save him. But after this account, they no longer allowed David to, go hunting by himself, and also to be part of the wars against the brothers of Goliath, the remaining, the mighty men, the giants that were connected to his bloodline. And so that they held him back.
After he killed Goliath, they were like, okay, dude, this is a bigger situation here.
Right. Yes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And so that's why you see mention of the other brothers as being killed by other members. Yeah, different people.
Ah, gotcha. Yeah, well, it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's again, it's an interesting story. And when you don't know about these connections or in that particular book, and so it comes to pass is, I believe the name of it. It's the lore, the ancient Arabic, I believe, and Palestinian lore from the stories of David and Solomon, and contain even the account of the wars against the lion men of Moab. So it's a fascinating book to read.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Wow. Speaking of books to read, I know that you just released a volume with additional work by Gerard Hickson.
Yes. Yeah.
I just saw that. I think his name is John the Morgile is his YouTube channel. He just released, I think it was just this last week. He read Kings Dethroned and released it as I think a 3 or 4 part video series.
I'm supposed to contact him too. I forgot, but I'm glad you. Yeah,
he did a good job.
That.
He took he read from the book, but he also put up images to go with it and grabbed the screenshots from the various figures and diagrams that are in the book and put them on the screen. And whenever he was talking about Galileo or something, he would put a picture up of Galileo. So he did a really good job of it. And I've got so many half-completed projects that it reminded me of a project that I wanted to do that I'll get to eventually someday, hopefully, where I was going to give some extensive commentary on Kings Dethroned, because as I read that book, especially as he starts dealing with things like the Laplace theory and of the formation of the so-called solar system according to science, quote unquote, air quotes, Immanuel Velikovsky had done quite a extensive rebuttal of that himself in his book Worlds in Collision back in the 50s. So even Velikovsky, who was like a contemporary of Einstein and a kind of a rival in some ways, he was bucking the system too. He's like, that don't work. That all the theories that are still held today for how the so-called solar system supposedly evolved from the Big Bang all have massive problems that nobody ever talks about. So exactly. What I wanted to do is kind of insert these commentaries as because King's Dethroned is such a short book anyway. Right. It's a really quick, short read that I could expand on it quite a bit with some other stuff. There's just no time, man. There's never enough time.
I know, brother. I know.
But
even the Universe as It is a very, very short book as well. But if you wanted to check it out, I'd be glad to send it to you as well.
Oh,
maybe.
Yeah, please do.
I'll do it. I'll send it to you later this evening then.
I liked his style of writing. I just he and what's the guy? Terra Firma, David Wardlaw Scott.
Yeah, Wardlaw Scott. Yeah.
I enjoyed reading both of them. I thought Samuel Robotham was a little hard to get through, but I really liked the other two. The writing style, I guess, I liked it better. But anyway.
There's a lot of really good stuff from a lot of different individuals. It's amazing when you open yourself up to a new perspective to see just how much there is, and how many different writers were covering these themes and writing about these concepts and using the Bible as their predominant source for the truth and as far as the biblical cosmology. So it's awesome to consider all these things.
Yeah, I mean, we are all thought this stuff was settled 500 years ago,
right?
And even before that it was the seeds were sown with Pythagoras and Eratosthenes and all that long before that. But until you realize, wait a minute, there was a massive movement from the early to mid 1800s, right, all the way up until, frankly, all the way up to Operation Deep Freeze. There was a lot of stuff going on back then. In fact, I was talking with the writer guy I was telling you about this afternoon, and he was telling me, because I mentioned something about the internet being created in the 90s, and he said, actually, it was created in the 70s. He's like, we were using in the military. He was telling me that he had access to early online chat systems that was a precursor to basically the chat systems that we have online now. But
the bulletin board system and all that.
Yeah, but I mean, that's even because most of the stuff that we're familiar with popped up in the early to mid 90s. And he's like, nah, dude, we were using the 70s. And then he was telling me about a Charlie Chaplin movie. I forget the name of it. Something about the future or things to come or something like that. But that was done in the 30s, and it had TV in it. Now, television wasn't even, officially, supposedly wasn't invented to the 50s. But this is in a Charlie Chaplin movie in the 30s. He says, I got good reason to believe that the television was actually invented in the 20s. And I didn't get time to finish the conversation with him because I had to go. But have you read Hunt for Zero Point yet?
No, but yeah, I know what you're. Again, another one of those things that I want to get into, but where's the time? So.
There's just, I joke about it. I'm so against cloning, but I really need about 10 more of me just to get get everything I need to get done. She was like, well, you just need to be better at delegating. I'm like, I can't delegate what's in my head. Like, you know how it is. I mean, there are things you can delegate and there's things that you can't. It's just like, because you're kind of making it up as you go. It's like there's stuff that you just know, or that where to find stuff, and you just kind of like I don't like when I write script. A lot of people when they do script writing, they have formulas. You know, you use the index card formula or the whiteboard card. You know, I don't do that. I just sit down and I start writing, like you know, and then I put it down and then I pick it up where I left off, and then I But a lot of people, they structure themselves. They create this outline, and everything. And they write to the outline. I'm not that guy. I kind of just write up by the seat of my pants. You know. You can't delegate that because you're making it up as you go along, you know?
Right.
It was like there's a scene in I think it was Raiders of the Lost Ark. You're like, what's the plan? And Indiana's like, I don't know. I'm making it up as I go.
Yeah, as I go, right. Yeah, I remember writing in a poem long ago about how my muse sings so much that sometimes I have to ignore, just because sometimes just too much going on. You can't keep up with it all.
Oh man, I couldn't sleep.
Inspiration.
Well, as I'm learning how to do various authoring techniques for 3D, like I dream about it now, and I'm laying there and I'm going. Now that I know that works, I wonder if you could do this. Like, and I can't sleep. Like several nights this week, I'm like, bing, after maybe a hour cap nap or something, I'm just bing, wide awake, and I'm laying there running algorithms through my head, and I'm like, well, I'm not sleeping, might as well just get up, start working, so.
Well, there's been many people report about how their dreams have been the inspiration for a solution or for helping them to understand a concept, or that answers were brought to them in that kind of manner. And we see that even in the story of Joseph and Pharaoh, and even like Nebuchadnezzar and David and others, that the Most High brought resolution and also affected history prophetically over hundreds of years, thousands of years, in the story of the statue, and the different kingdoms. But here in this story with Joseph, for 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of famine, it was that story that preserved and even brought Joseph back into relationship with his family. So, yeah.
That is interesting. I don't, it's certainly in that day and age, there was a belief in dream interpretation. Like, you had people that were assigned dream interpretation,
Right.
And the people who had the gift of doing that. So if we've been given the gift to do that, then that means that there's significance to your dreams,
right.
Which kind of freaks me out, because I've had some pretty whacked out dreams in the past. And have you ever had recurring dreams that throughout your life you've just, every now and then you have this? Yeah, I don't know.
Because I always think about how in our culture we don't give any significance to dreams or to dreaming, or even speaking about that with our children and our families. But yet in many cultures it's like one of the most important things to do and to consider, and that a lot of tribes and peoples, they come together and speak about any of the dreams that were significant that occurred amongst their people before they do anything. And so they give, a remarkable amount of, as far as, the dreams and enacting them, learning from them. They come together with the council of the elders to speak about, the dreaming and the dreaming process, and if any kind of significant dream occurred amongst their people the night before. I mean, if we live that way, because certainly dreaming was important to many of the prophets and to the elders and the patriarchs and matriarchs of Israel, in a way that, we see significant stories about dreaming and the unfolding and the prophecy and the connections of that kind of stuff, and the way that it impacted the community, that if we had a significance on dreaming, how we might learn because I do believe that that is a way that the Most High speaks to his people and to people that are spiritual in aspect, and that one of the ways of the language of the Most High and sharing his revelation, I do believe, is through dreaming, and that it's quite more important and significant than we consider or give any kind of, as far as focus to.
Well, yeah, it makes me think, because, our lives are so busy that
Right.
it's hard for, nothing's too hard for God. He can do anything. Yahuwah could do anything, but he speaks in a still small voice. So
Right.
it's hard for, I guess the better way of saying it, it's hard for us to hear him when we're in our busy day.
Yeah.
Which is probably why he speaks through dreams. I've had some pretty whacked out dreams, so I don't think they're all coming from him, but that our mind or subconscious or whatever is more open and susceptible to the radio frequency of eternity. Maybe this way.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
Spirit realm, for good or bad. I mean, I think that I think our body, our mind, it's wired to do what it does on its own. But I think that because our conscious mind has been quieted, that we are now able to hear more in the spirit realm.
Yes.
And that's how and why he speaks in visions and dreams. I mean, think of Peter in the dream, with the kill and eat, the meat come down
unclean,
yeah. There's several examples in Scripture of this, and we see in the last days, he said that young and old men have dreams and visions.
Right.
So that would, visions, at least for me, are different, because visions for me anyway, the way the way I would differentiate between the two are, I've had visions in a wakened state, whereas dreams are in a sleep state. When I have visions, they're usually pretty point blank, pretty clear, I get it. Like, you don't have to tell me what it was. Like, I get it. I don't need an interpreter. Right. Dreams, though, on the other hand, do apparently, need an interpreter, which is interesting, because then then the other person has to be spiritually attuned to walk in that realm and understand it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Joseph, maybe that's why. I mean, he was all about himself. Hey, I've had these visions and dreams. Check it out, guys. And he got him in trouble with his brothers, and they're like, get out of here. So he was so full of himself when he was doing the dreams thing, back home. But then he's put into a situation where he's got no choice but to be quiet and stay, and listen. And so he probably heightened. He was predisposed to it, but I think that skill set was heightened for him in that season where he was
during that time.
Put away.
Right. Yeah, I fully agree. He certainly had a skill set that made him later be at the right place at the right time for aiding what would really be the world, and that the Most High utilized him as he did David and others, again, other prophets and other patriarchs and matriarchs all throughout the line. And I just think that if we had an inclination to where we even spoke about dreaming with our children, or took a few minutes in the morning to consider them before just getting up and getting ready for the day and going off to work, like most people doing the 9 to 5, just how much more rich our relationships with the Most High would be, because he does utilize dreaming, and we spend 1/3 of our lives, in dreaming as a natural part of the process of rest, sleep, and dreams and healing, as far as the body. So,
man, you think about that. a third. So if you live 90 years,
Yeah.
30 years of your life you spent
dreaming. Right.
Wow, that's a trip. Never thought about it
Yeah.
that way. When you put it in that perspective, yeah, it's true.
Yeah, very important, I think. Yeah.
Assuming you get 8 hours of sleep a night, which lately I don't.
Not so much.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, we kind of rabbit trailed all over the place here, but yeah, it's a pretty cool discussion, man. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think so as well. And yeah, I do always enjoy the discussions that we have. And yeah, we'll pick it up next week on your show.
All right. Sounds good, bro.
All right. God bless everyone. Good night. Shalom.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.